Welcome in. This is Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. Hope all of you out there are having a phenomenal week. We have an absolutely loaded show on tap for you today with the juiciest Sixers rumors that we've seen in a little while. Is there mutual interest between Kevin Durant and the Philadelphia 76ers? Ian Begley, SNY, saying that the Sixers' higher executives have had conversations about trading for KD, and he views Philly as a desired landing spot. And Kevin Durant might want to trade to the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's explore it a little bit further. So we'll set the foundation here and get you caught up with everything going down on the Kevin Durant front. He met last week with owner Joe Tsai and told them and gave them an ultimatum. Fire Sean Marks and Steve Nash or trade me. And if you want to bring me back, you have to fire the general manager and the head coach. If not, then we have some problems. Joe Tsai then backed Marks and Nash on Twitter and said, we'll do, moving forward, what's best for the Brooklyn Nets. I read that. I saw it. I took it as he wants to keep his general manager and his head coach, the employees that he hired, who he envisioned having success with. And up to now, the 76ers had not been mentioned as a Kevin Durant destination, but things are starting to get a little bit more interesting and pick up some steam. As for what Begley had to say about KD potentially going to the city of brotherly love, as of earlier this week, there were high-ranking members of the Sixers who have felt strongly about engaging with Brooklyn on a Kevin Durant trade. It is unknown if Brooklyn and Philadelphia have made any recent progress on an acquisition. The Sixers would most certainly have to include Tyrese Maxey in a trade for KD. Given the dynamics at play, you'd think that Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, and other players/draft picks would also be included. Tyrese Maxey is one of the top young guards in the league. Harris, a New York native, is seen around the league as a high-character player and a leader. He has a history with Ben Simmons in Philadelphia and is the type of veteran who could help the Nets team win games after a Kevin Durant trade. Now, I have supported Tyrese Maxey ever since he was stolen and drafted by Philadelphia in the first round. Shout out to Mike Muscala for hitting that three to convey the pick back during the NBA bubble. And in year one, I saw flashes of brilliance from Tyrese Maxey. And then we saw him in the Summer League. And I said, this guy can become a future all-star. Check out the channel. The receipts are certainly there. And giving up Maxey would be crushing. It would be a dagger to the city of Philadelphia, this fan base, and the front office. Doc Rivers just recently said he's the most impressive young player that I have ever coached. And Doc Rivers is one of the greatest coaches of all time. I understand the playoff struggles and the collapses, but that's really lofty praise. So while giving up Tyrese Maxey would certainly hurt this organization because he's the best young guard that the Sixers have drafted going back to Allen Iverson in that historic 1996 NBA draft class. But we're talking about Kevin Durant here. He is box office. He is special. He is one of one. He's one of the greatest players that we've ever seen. And Kevin Durant playing with Joel Embiid immediately makes the Sixers title contenders, and they can win an NBA championship with the current construction of the roster with KD. As we continue to keep it moving on the show, I do want to hear from you because I grew up in Philadelphia. I love and appreciate the passion that comes from this fan base, and I want to hear from you in the comments section because, honestly, I just love your basketball knowledge because I know what you're all about. So tell me this. Would you give up Tyrese Maxey for Kevin Durant? Type Y for yes, type N for no. That'll be the pinned comment on today's show. So if you get hit with that YouTube ad break, use it to your advantage. Scroll on down and get your votes in. Some more thoughts on this. Embiid and KD would make the Sixers dominant, and they could average about 70 points per game. At least 30 each. That's how special they are on the offensive end of the floor. And Joel Embiid still is one of the best defensive players in the NBA, and Kevin Durant is underrated on the defensive end. So we can talk about and hype up the offensive acumen, the offensive skills, and the offensive potential that a KD and Joel Embiid pairing would bring to this organization, but defensively, they'd still be really good. And immediately, that 1-2 punch would make the Sixers one of the most lethal teams in the NBA and one of the favorites to win an NBA championship for the first time since the 80s when Dr. J was throwing down hammers. And while there are some concerns about Kevin Durant, 34 years old, injuries starting to pile up a little bit, this guy is still a walking bucket who can find twine and put the biscuit in the basket from all three levels of the floor. And the games played over the last 2 seasons, a little bit of a concern, 55 and 35 because of those aforementioned injuries. But this past year, he was still averaging 30 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and the efficiency with KD is always what's crazy to me. And that's why he's so unique. At the size, given the release point of that shot, the overall offensive toolbox, it is special to the highest degree, and the shooting efficiency has always backed that up, both from the field as well as from distance. So that's what's appealing about Kevin Durant, but there are certainly some trepidations as well, given the lack of availability the last couple of years. But when you make this trade, if you're Philadelphia, you're really trying to capitalize on this window over the next 2 or 3 years. And by the way, Kevin Durant's contract extension starts this year, and there are 4 years remaining on that deal. Do want to thank all of you who continue to support everything that we do here on Philadelphia 76ers Now. Thanks for helping us reach 8,000 subs. I said earlier in the week that once we got to that number, I'd think about shotgun and a beer. The next time I'm on Philadelphia 76ers Now, I will do that. I'm doing this show live right now, so a little bit hard to do a shotgun right now. But if you haven't hopped on board and you haven't joined the Sixers family here at Chat Sports, do so right now for the best, most informative, and entertaining Sixers coverage from a guy who grew up in the area. It's youtube.com/76erstv, or hit that red subscribe button. Now, a lot of you are probably saying, wait, hold on. Kevin Durant and James Harden, there was that fallout in Brooklyn. They can't join forces once again. They're not going to be teammates, right? Well, it looks as though that relationship is actually okay. They were overseas at the Travis Scott concert in London recently, and that's something that Ian Begley talked about. Regarding the Sixers, it would be a bit strange on the surface for Durant to reunite with James Harden after the way things played out in Brooklyn. Is there any lingering issue between the two? For those reading the tea leaves, it's worth pointing out that both Durant and Harden spent time together in London recently as they were at that Travis Scott concert. And competitors, at the end of the day, they want to win titles. They want to win NBA championships. Yes, KD has a couple, but he wants to add to his resume as one of the greatest players of all time. And winning another one would certainly add to that pedestal. And for James Harden, he's seeking that first championship of his future Hall of Fame career. Top 75 player of all time. Also, one of the most unique offensive players that's ever graced a basketball floor and laced him up, but he doesn't have a championship. He needs that on his resume to truly be considered one of the greatest players of this generation. As for what the Sixers lineup would look like with Kevin Durant, let's just operate under the premise that you trade away Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris. This starting five, still really good. Harden is your point. D'Anthony Melton is your number 2. Kevin Durant is your do-it-all wing. PJ Tucker is your lockdown defensive big. And then Joel Embiid is holding it down anywhere on the floor as the most dominant physical force in the NBA. As for the current starting five, this is what it is right now. James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, PJ Tucker, and Joel Embiid. This lineup is still really, really good, but where does it compare with that lineup with Kevin Durant? Also, this just coming in from Frank Isola, very respected New York-based reporter, also mentioned that KD is interested in playing with James Harden. So it looks as though that relationship is just fine. That note coming in just moments ago as we react to this live. So you saw the starting lineup with Harden, KD, and the rest, and then without KD. Which lineup do you think gets more wins this upcoming season? Is it the Durant lineup or the Maxey lineup? KD for Durant, TM for Tyrese Maxey. Let us know. Subscribe to the channel. And as always, appreciate all of you for rocking with us.